What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Two Savage Democrats podcast, episode 109, Evolution versus Creationism. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be a part one. There may be a part two to this. There probably definitely will be a part two to this. We'd like it to be a debate, but we're finding it difficult to get somebody on the podcast that's willing to debate this. It seems like a lot of people don't want to discuss this, and the people that do don't have that good of an understanding.
Right. Yeah, we've definitely had that problem a few times.
Yeah, where it's like people come on the show and they don't get it.
Yeah. We definitely want a good challenge, a good debate, one that really tests us, because that's when it gets fun, you know?
Yeah.
And when we get a little worried.
Full disclosure, we both believe in evolution, both Brian and I. So that is why we're starting off, just to make that clear as we start. So we have Answers in Genesis pulled up here. And if you don't know, they're one of the they have the Noah's Ark thing. It's a big creationist museum. They believe in creationism. I know the guy who runs it debated Bill Nye on evolution versus creationism, but it's one of the biggest. I mean, if you're looking for creationism and you're looking to be convinced of creationism, Answers in Genesis is the place to go. So they have an article, and it's 12 arguments evolutionists should not use. And what we're going to do is we're going to read over those arguments, and we're essentially going to debunk them. Or we're not going to debunk them. We're going to prove why they're solid arguments is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is evolution is a fact. Now, they say when core beliefs are attacked, it's often easy for humans to retreat to statements such as, my belief is a fact and yours is wrong. That's exactly why we cannot trust mere human understanding to explain the unsolvable past. Emotion and pride get in the way. Evolution is not a fact, no matter how many times evolutionists say it is. It's a framework built on assumptions about the past. Assumptions that will never have direct, first-handed observational proof. Well, I'd like to start off just saying that, number one, people who believe in creationism oftentimes say that I know I'm right because blank, because the Bible says so.
Irony there.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Because if you watch the debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye, Ken Ham is the creator of Answers in Genesis, he says numerous times his response to Bill Nye's questions is, well, there's a book for that. Like, he doesn't give an argument, he just says, well, the Bible. And you can't use that as an argument. Now, emotion and pride get in the way. Yeah, they get in the way, but emotion also gets in the way when you're on the religious side as well.
Probably more so, I would argue.
Yeah. And I would think that evolution is a fact. Things evolve. We view evolution, we can view microevolution every single day. Microevolution has happened. There's the experiment they did with the lizards, where they put the lizards on the island in the Caribbean. They moved the island and they evolved new jaws and stomach valves.
Yeah.
Like, we watched that happen. So and my question is, everybody will submit that microevolution happens because we've seen it happen, right? Humans, we haven't had an understanding and a perception of what's going on for long enough to see our own species evolve. But if we survive as a species long enough, we will eventually see that. But we know microevolution happens. So why is it so much of a stretch to say that macroevolution happens as well?
Yeah, and going back to what he was saying, it's kind of common. I hear people say, oh, well, evolution is just a theory. Mm-hmm. Well, everything's just a theory, but I mean, it's a theory that the sun will rise in the morning.
Yeah.
But we have faith in that because of evidence. It's not blind emotional faith or because a book said so. There's actual evidence for that. Just as there's evidence for evolution. There's
also like a theory, a really common theory. We have not proven this, are the orbits around the sun. Right? We have not proven that we orbit the sun. That is a theory that we have because everything seems to work in that way. Like, we see planets moving, we assume that that's what's happening. It's not like proven, but we're assuming that that's what happened, and it holds up every single time. So to say that evolution is not a fact, first of all, microevolution is a fact. It's proven that it's a fact. All right? Macroevolution is the one, because we haven't even been able to witness it, because it takes millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years. But if microevolution is a fact, I don't think it's that far of a stretch to say that macro is as well.
And one more point I really want to make is they're like, well, you weren't there. That's another common argument I hear is you weren't actually there, so your argument and your evidence is invalid. And what I like to point out is, okay, there's cases where someone will kill someone in the middle of nowhere, yet we're able to use science and maybe they leave DNA fragments left and we're able to identify them. No one was actually there, but we have evidence showing who did it, evidence showing what happened.
A crime scene, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we do when we find fossils, and we kind of piece together this evidence of evolution. It's the same concept. Just because you're not physically there doesn't mean evidence wasn't left behind, which is, I think, what creationists kind of miss.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely so. This guy in the comments, Michael, said, but you can't rule out everything just because you have a theory.
Well,
What
that's
randomly
true.
caused this wide change? Just because you can't accept the miracles and proof of God that happened in the world doesn't mean you are right. In fact, there so much to Catholic. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not miracles to say that something happened. Like, I am totally 100% for believing in creationism and for believing in God. I'm 100% for that. But your evidence behind your belief in God cannot be faith and books. Okay? Name some sort of evidence you have to back up your theories. If you want to talk about humans transitioning to from primates to who we are now, you can look at transitional species. You can look at Lucy, who's the quote unquote oldest human, clearly different. We found thousands of other skulls and fossils of transitional species. Now, we had somebody on the podcast that said those are mutations. Those are mutation
That's
or
just a bad
mutated.
argument.
Like, they're not mutated humans. How are we finding? Yeah.
The chances that every single fossil we found just so happened to be deformed humans, like, what are the chances of that happening? I would argue it's likely impossible that every single fossil just so happened to be a deformed human. That's incredibly unrealistic from my point of view.
Yeah, and Michael, I know you're not saying that we're wrong. I'm just saying that your evidence. See, here's the problem I have, and this is why I take evolution. I'm reading The Case for a Creator right now by Lee Strobel, and he is making a strong argument against evolution. Like, he's really arguing. The majority of the book is
We have
written
to do our research
against. We did our research in one part of it, and it turned out that it was still evolution. But because essentially what he does is he tries to debunk Darwin's theory of evolution, which evolution was around, the idea of it was around before Darwin.
His grandfather tried to prove it.
Yeah, Darwin just created so here, what caused Lucy to randomly change? See, that's an interesting question. Lucy didn't change. What evolution is essentially, because DNA mutations happen all the time, right? There are DNA mutations all of the time. Now, if there were to be a DNA mutation in a species that benefited that species and gave it an advantage over the other species that didn't have that mutation, then that gene, that mutation would carry on because it's an advantage. So it's like, hey, it's easier to gain food with this DNA. Like, hey, let's say take giraffes. Giraffes have longer necks, right? They can acquire food. They're not the fastest animals. They're not the strongest animals, but they can reach that shit in the trees. So that gives them a huge advantage over other animals. So that is obviously going to live on while the old mutation dies off that doesn't have that advantage.
And to touch on his point on how it's not so much proven and you can't say for sure, we have to take the evidence we have and make the most rational decision based off what we have available. If you're able to present evidence that contradicts a theory or shows us something we're missing, then that's obviously would be great to see, but that's not really out there for creationists. And that's why we have to base what we know and what we study off of the evidence. And the evidence clearly points towards evolution.
Well, and we know, again, microevolution is a thing. We've seen it happen in multiple studies.
Species.
Just because you can't see the large scale doesn't mean that it didn't happen, right? That just means that will be here. Here's essentially what it's like for me. We haven't lived through a major ice age, right? But we've lived through the winter. So to say that, well, ice ages can't happen, but winters can, that makes no sense. Just because we haven't seen an ice age, because we haven't been around long enough to get through an ice age cycle, doesn't mean that ice ages don't happen. It just means that we haven't experienced it yet. So if you look at, but we experience winter all the time. Microevolution is evolution. That is evolution. It's just you
Yeah.
put the word micro in front of it because you don't want to admit that evolution is a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are two different definitions for it. If you want to be technical, macro and micro, but they work together similarly. One example is, I used to study infectious diseases a lot, and you see that a lot with viruses, bacteria. I mean, just look at the antibacterial resistant or antibiotic resistant bacteria. Look at viruses mutating, all using kind of the same concept. So we see it essentially at all levels, even the microscopic level of viruses and bacteria.
Yeah. We see it all the time. Now he says Lucy was an ape, not a human. If you compare the bones we have, they are nearly identical to that of apes. They look nothing like humans. Lucy, because Lucy was a transitional species. She was not a human. She was the first quote unquote human, but if you went back in time and I have an interesting thing. If you were to go back in time and get Lucy as a child and bring her back now, she wouldn't be able to understand our society. She wouldn't be able to understand our how we live. Let me go back here. Hold on a second, because this is really interesting. Hold on. Where is it here? Because this is a really interesting thing. It's the let me see. Where is it? Hold on. This is it. It basically shows how long we'd have to go back, and we could get a human and bring them back.
And it's not just Lucy. I mean, there's thousands of fossils that we have scattered throughout different universities and different educational departments and museums, all kind of pointing towards this, transition to what we are now. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to like a university, they just have tons of fossils just all over the place that you can see, that you can find. Um, so it's not as if there's just one or two, there's thousands easy.
Yeah. I'm trying to find. I can't remember, but Oh yeah, wait, hold on. Damn it, I can't find it. But essentially, you could go. They had this video. It was really interesting. You go back in time a certain amount of time, and you can gather a human and bring it back, and it wouldn't know the difference if it were to be born in this time period versus I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was really interesting. You can believe. Wait, let's see. You can support. So let's go on to the next argument here. I think we've already covered the
Right.
evolution is a fact one enough. Now, would you say evolution is a fact, Brian?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, so would I. I think there's a lot of evidence for it. And I think there's enough until the other side can come up with. So right now, I think we would all assume that the Earth orbits the sun, and that these orbits occur. Right now, it's not technically a 100% fact, but unless you can come up with something different, it's a fact. And that's what I say with evolution. If you can come up with arguments besides the Bible and miracles, then we can have a discussion. Argument 2, only the uneducated reject evolution.
I wouldn't necessarily say they're uneducated. I think they're somewhat I hate to use the word indoctrinated, but yeah, into believing that you can't learn this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. There's a documentary I was watching the other day where they had it was a relatively conservative religious college, and they were teaching evolution, and you had very sharp students that were, majoring in a field of some sort of science, and they kind of had to accept the fact that what their parents taught them was wrong, and that God didn't just make man, and that we evolved over a long period of time. If you believe in creationism, I don't think you're necessarily stupid. I think there's a good chance you're maybe indoctrinated, or maybe that's, if you can't kind of mess evolution in your religion, maybe it's just kind of a comforting thing. But
it's a fear. People are afraid of accepting evolution as a theory because they think that it goes against the Bible, which I don't think
it does.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think it does, though. That's the problem. But the truth is that you can have evolution, you can have your belief in God, you can have belief in the Big Bang, you can still have belief in God. All of these things can work together. The problem is we have people who become so attached to their ideology that they refuse to accept any other ideas. So someone who's a very devout Christian may be reluctant to accept evolution because he's afraid, I'll be shamed from the church. The evidence lies with evolution. I don't think if you believe in creationism that you're an idiot. I think that you're thinking critically, which I like. I just fear people who, like someone like Ken Ham, who has done his research. He's definitely not stupid.
Yeah, he has a PhD.
Yeah, he's definitely not stupid. I think it's unintelligent to accept evolution or to accept creationism without researching it, to just blindly accept it. I believe that you should investigate everything you think. If you think evolution is a fact, read books that counter it. See if you can, read like The Case for a Creator, like I'm reading right now. I believe evolution is a fact. I'm reading The Case for a Creator, which tries to debunk evolution. I'm learning about both sides. So I think before you come to a conclusion, if you believe in creationism or in evolution, you should definitely go through and learn about both sides so you can really make an educated decision. I think it's uneducated to believe in either one without investigating it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I guess if his argument simply there is, you can't say that someone's stupid just because they're a creationist. Okay, I suppose I would agree with that, but I'm a little critical of their evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's definitely arguments to be made for creationism. Argument 3, overwhelming evidence in all fields of science support evolution. The irony, of course, is that for centuries prior to Darwin's publication of The Origin of Species, the majority of scientists found the opposite to be true. The evidence supported creation. What changed? Not the evidence, rather the starting point changed, moving from the Bible, God's word, to humanism, man's word. See, I hate how they throw that in there because it's
and also, I mean, another thing they could have changed is hundreds of years of extra research and technology that's allowed us to view evidence that wasn't available to those scientists prior to Darwin.
Yeah. Well, he says creationists can. That's like saying that the Earth is still flat just because, or the Earth is still the center of the universe just because now a scientist came along, Copernicus, and like convinced people that that the sun was the center of our solar system, not the Earth, right? Obviously, you believe in creationism and God's word before you have a mechanism for evolution. But as soon as that mechanism was created, people said, hey, that makes sense. Let's see if that works. And it pans out. The evidence supports it. And so people transition. That's what happens. So overwhelming evidence, the reason people change their minds is because they're convinced otherwise. So if you want to know the truth about why people are not listening to a book anymore, and I keep referring to this, sounds so cocky that I keep calling the Bible the book, but it's because a mechanism and evidence is behind evolution.
Yeah, and there is a lot of field of science that kind of accepts not just evolution, but an older Earth, physics, chemistry, biology. If you study the Earth, if you study
I never said the Bible said the Earth is flat. I said people used to believe the Earth is flat, and then a scientist came around and changed it.
Right, and but yeah, there's a wide variety of fields in science that is based, even medicine, is based around the notion of evolution. So
Yeah.
I would say it is widely accepted by not just one field of science, but
All
really
fields
all
of
of them.
science. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and yeah. So let's see. Bass fishing, I believe in God, but I also believe in the Big Bang and evolution. See, that's good. Would I consider myself religious? No. I would not consider myself a religious individual. Belief in a God, but not religious.
I might go Catholic. I haven't decided yet. I'm kind of looking into it. I need to read more on them.
Yeah, the only problem with the Catholic religion, I don't mean to trigger anybody who's Catholic in the stream, but the only problem with the Catholic religion is that they're very, like, have a lot of controversy going on within the religion right now.
Yeah, no, I know that. Yeah, that's.
But I don't know. It's just I like the Catholic religion because they accept science.
Yeah, that's why I like. They're actually pretty good at it too.
Yeah.
A lot of Big Bang Theory was really first theorized by a Catholic priest.
So
And
you believe in a creator too, then?
me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet, and it's a big question. I haven't decided. I would probably lean towards some sort of God. Um, in terms of which God, that would be very difficult to kind of decide. But I could be persuaded either way, regardless. But it's hard to say for sure, in my opinion. It's something I really don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
This guy says science hates us. Here's the reason that science hates religion. This is a famous Neil deGrasse Tyson quote. He said, religion tries to knock on the doors of the science classroom and have what they learned or what they believe to be taught in the science classroom. But you never see science knocking on the religious doors and saying, teach evolution, ever. So I think there's a huge difference.
I don't think they hate anybody either. I mean, no one really cares. They just disagree if you kind of hold beliefs and kind of hold society back from truly understanding the world around us.
Yeah, the Bible,
That's
there
what
are
they
so
don't
many
like.
things in the Bible that are easy to debunk. Like Noah being 600 years old when he builds the ark with zero tools, right?
Yeah.
Pretty easy to debunk that. Okay. It's not that hard. So let's see. What did we just do? Argument number 4. Doubting evolution is like doubting gravity. Why does this argument fail? We'll show you. Take a pencil or a pen, hold it in the air, and then drop it to the floor. That's gravity. That's funny because like he didn't actually define what gravity is, whatever. Next, make a single-celled organism like an amoeba and turn it into a goat. Go ahead. We'll wait. No, as you can see, there's a see how fucking pretentious that is to say that. First of all, show me a miracle. That would be like me saying, show me a miracle. Right? Oh, you believe in God? Show me a miracle. I'll wait. Oh, no miracles? Okay. Well, it's like, that's so stupid. You can't say, oh, we can't see evolution, so bye. Like, that's so dumb.
It's a bit of a nirvana foul. I mean, anyone can experience gravity. The thing with evolution is obviously that takes a long time to go from a single cell organism to a goat, as they gave. So for him to realistically expect that, you would need millions of years, which none of us could live to, obviously. So it's a false comparison that he's providing. It sounds good as an argument. The problem is you're comparing two totally different things, and it's a fallacy of an argument.
Yeah. I hate that he said that. That argument's stupid. Argument number 5, doubting evolution is like believing the earth is flat.
I think believing the Earth is flat is a little crazier. I'll give him that. But I mean, they're both kind of. I think some people will say creationism is a conspiracy theory. I don't know if they really fit the notion of a conspiracy theory. Definitely pseudoscience, but I don't know about a conspiracy theory like flat earthers. Like flat earthers, like the ones we talked to, they didn't know how to handle their weeds, you know.
Yeah.
So they are a little different, but they both use bad science. I think flat earthers probably more so, but
Yeah.
flat earthers also usually deny evolution and the moon landing, and they usually deny an old Earth and everything. So it's
Yeah.
basically creationism on steroids.
Yeah. So argument 6, it's here, so it must have evolved. A conclusion does not prove the premises are true. That is, if the answer is 4, we could arrive at any number of ways: 2 plus 2, 5 minus 1, etc. In the same way, evolutionists often assume that since certain species have traits. See, this guy doesn't understand. See, I have zero respect for Ken Ham. I think he's an idiot. I just said he wasn't, but I seriously think he's an idiot. I seriously think he's an idiot. Like, the reason we believe in evolution is because we found transitional species. We know that at one point there was an intermediate species between humans and primates. We found them. It's not like me saying, well, humans are here, so evolution, with no evidence. You're saying, well, we're here, so people that puff humans out with their fingers. Like, no. Okay? Like, you can't say that when you believe the same thing. What, just because a book written by man tells you that, you're going to believe it? Just, like, blindly believe that? We believe that evolution exists because there are intermediate species that we found. Give me a good enough reason that creationism existed and prove it with objective evidence, and then I will change my mind. But until you have objective evidence, like fossils, well, the reason we don't have fossils is because we're great. No, that's so stupid.
It's a cop out.
Yeah, no, and you always see it with they can't debunk the intermediate species. They can't do it. When I say Lucy, or when I give other examples, like if you go to an evolution museum, like you were saying, there are intermediate species fossils there. Now, those are just deformed humans. Every single one of them that we found just happened to be a deformed human.
Their arguments are going to be bad if they make any. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, getting back, it's also kind of like the first argument he made. What we believe and what science says, it's based on evidence. It's not a blind leap of faith. Like, to believe that we just came here and humans just popped out of the air, that takes quite a leap of faith, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But with the evidence we have, you could say, oh, you have to believe in evolution just like I have to believe in God. But the thing is, we're not taking a leap of faith as you are. We're taking a hop of faith based off of mountains of evidence and scientific studies pointing to a conclusion.
Why do you think? I love how he makes the argument like, well, people didn't accept evolution until Darwin came along. Yeah, that's because there wasn't enough evidence until Darwin came along. So obviously there's evidence. He's essentially proving that there's enough evidence that people changed their mind when Darwin came along, right? There's enough evidence behind evolution that when Darwin came along and brought the theory, the theory of natural selection, wrote The Origin of Species, people started changing their minds. That would imply that there's evidence, okay? Now, why did people stop being creationists? Because as there's all of this evidence flooding out for evolution, creationism just says, hey, God. They've been using the same argument for 2,000 years. You can't do it. That would be like me saying that the Earth is the center of the solar system, using arguments that they used when they believed that, and not updating them at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a bad argument he used there in saying, with new evidence provided, we changed our mind to something else. Yeah. Well, that's what you're supposed to do when you're given new evidence. And most creationists, when presented with these new evidence that kind of contradict what they believe, they don't change their mind. They don't reform. They kind of stay in the same, kind of the same mindset. So they really don't take new evidence and go with it like other people have.
Yeah.
Like there's like Isaac Newton, for example. Yeah, he would have been a creationist, but obviously extremely intelligent. But the reality is everyone was back then. And I assure you, if Isaac Newton was alive past that time, he would have believed in evolution because the science and the evidence was there.
The only time Isaac Newton invoked God was when his mathematical equations didn't pan out. That's it. When his mathematical equations did not pan out, he said it must be the work of God. I forgot the exact quote, but that was when his mathematical equations stopped panning out. Then he said that was, but that just means we hadn't figured it out at that point, right? Just because right now there isn't, enough evidence for you for evolution doesn't mean that we won't find any. Less and less people are believing in in creationism every single year. Less and less people.
Yeah, and as the evidence continues, I don't think it'll matter to a certain group of people. I mean, when we had the debate with the one guy, he said nothing would change his mind. Even if I could take him back in time and show him with his own two eyes, he would have believed it was the work of the devil or something. So some things will never change people's mind. And I think some people are just not going to change their mind. That's all there is.
Here's the thing. You remember we were debating the people about the flat earth? Yeah. And we said, why would it matter? Like, if the earth was flat, it's not going to change anything if it were to be flat right now. Obviously, everything's still functioning the same way. And
we're not controlled.
What's the incentive to hide it? It's the same kind of thing with evolution. Nobody would care if creationism happened if there was enough evidence to prove it happened. It's not like if I start believing in creationism, like, oh no, like, I don't care. If you can prove to me that evolution happened, I will believe in evolution. Or in creationism. You can prove to me creationism happened, I will believe in creationism. But right now, the evidence is with evolution. More and more people are coming to our side. They're leaving creationism. It wouldn't matter either way. There's no incentive for one side to be right besides
We're
for
not making money off it.
the evolution side has no incentive to be right. What do they get? What do they get for being right? Nothing. They get absolutely nothing for being right. In fact, if creationism is right, those are the people that have something to win. They're like, oh, God's real. Those are the ones. Evolution, they have nothing. So there's really more incentive for creationism to be right. They can't bring up any evidence, so people are changing their minds.
Yeah, there's huge incentive to debunk theories. If you could debunk the cell theory, you would be a very famous scientist. If you could debunk evolution or really throw a wrench in the theory, you would be very famous, and you'll probably be in science textbooks, and you'll be talked about and all sorts of cool things. But
that's why Darwin's being talked about so much, because he threw a wrench in creationism.
Exactly. And that's what science does. It destroys bad ideas and promotes good ones. So if
it happens all the time.
It does happen, and it's happened to every scientist. It's happened to Einstein, Tesla. It's happened to Hawking. It's happened to everybody.
Yeah.
So with that, you have to acknowledge that there's a huge incentive for scientists to kind of debunk evolution, because they would essentially be very wealthy. They'd likely have Nobel prizes in the future, and likely a lot of money and fame. So I think there's huge incentive for the creationists to debunk evolution. They're just not able to.
Yeah. Pride, fine. I mean, I guess you could be proud, but I didn't come up with evolution, right?
I mean, I think if you could debunk evolution, you'd be I would be proud if I could overturn 100 years of science.
I don't care what happened, as long as one of them happened, right? Like, it doesn't matter how we got here. The fact is, we're here. The reason I believe in evolution is because the evidence is behind it. If you prove creationism, it's not like I'm going to shoot myself in the face, because it's like, I'm just going to be like, okay, I guess creationism happened. I was wrong about evolution. But since the evidence is behind evolution, it's you know, it's not like I invented evolution or natural selection, right? It'd be different if Darwin were to be debunked, but I really have no attachment to evolution besides evidence. It's like being a Republican. It's like voting Republican. I vote Republican because I feel like their policies are better for the economy. But if a Democrat, if the Democrats could somehow prove that their policies are better for the economy, I would have no problem voting for a Democrat. It's just the reason I vote Republican is because I prefer their policies when it comes to the economy. I think they work better. Same kind of thing. Now, for a creationist to come over to the evolution side, you literally have to leave. Like, you don't have to, but that's what the church says. You have to leave your religion to change that, because you're not accepting God anymore or whatever. That's why people are afraid to accept evolution. You want to know why there's so many creationists? It's because they're indoctrinated from a young age.
Yeah, they are, and they're told what they can and can't believe. And the issue is, when they're presented with it, they either have to reform what they were told, and not every religion says you have to. There's some that don't, but there is a sizable amount that teaches that, you know, humans just, we're here as we are now. There was no change. You know, if you went back as far as you wanted, humans would still look like this. And the problem with that is the evidence isn't pointing in that direction. And indoctrination is a powerful thing, and confirming your own bias, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah,
and
this guy,
you see that a lot with creationists.
This guy commented on our Kent Hovind video and said he responded to me on YouTube and said he would be interested and that you should call him.
On Hangouts?
Like, that we should call him.
If he wants to join a Hangout chat, yeah, I'm down.
No, Kent Hovind.
Kent Hovind wants to?
Apparently he responded to this guy on YouTube and said that we should call him, yeah. Call Kent Hovind.
I mean, if he gives us our number, yeah, I'm down to debate Kent
I said,
Hovind.
how do we,
does he have
an email? He has contacts on the site. Oh, I have his website right here, and there's a contact on here.
Does he have like an email and we can explain? Because, I mean, I guess we could talk to him on the phone, but...
Yeah, well, when we finish this up, we'll discuss it. But I'm going to go back to these arguments things so we can just finish this up. Argument number 7, natural selection is evolution. This is most likely the most abused argument on the list. and most in need of being scrapped. Often evolutionists bait people into showing them change is merely natural selection, and the switch to say these proves molecules demand evolution. However, this is quite misleading. Natural selection, even according to evolutionists, does not have the power to generate anything new. The observable process can only act upon existing characteristics so that some members of a species are more likely to survive. That's true. That's true. Natural selection is
a
a
mechanism.
yeah, it's a mechanism. Evolution, that we've already addressed that argument.
Yeah.
Common designs mean common ancestry. This is argument 8. Historical common descent is not and cannot be confirmed through observation. Rather, certain observations are explained by assumptions about the past. These observations, we might add, have alternative explanations. Common body plans, for example, do not prove common descent. That's an assumption. Yes, but it's better than assuming. It's a very strong assumption to make, by the way, but it's better than assuming that a 2,000-year-old book is right and we should ignore evidence.
Yeah, especially when you look at like the genetic level and the fact that all organisms just so happen to go through transcription and translation, and how it synthesizes protein. It's all the same. It's well, unlike it's universal. So I think it is a strong argument that we have a common denominator, which supports the theory.
Sedimentary layers show millions of years of geological activity. Sedimentary layers show one thing: sedimentary layers. In other words, we can and should study the rocks, but claim that the rocks prove the Earth must be billions of years old ignores one important point. Such an interpretation is built upon a stack of assumptions. When we start from the Bible and examine the rocks within the framework of a global flood, the need for long ages vanishes. Well, so Earth rock changes over time, right? If you have things like, we know that on Earth there's things in the atmosphere that would change a rock, right? Like a meandering river would change how the rocks are then and stuff like that. If you take rock, like if an asteroid were to hit the planet, which has happened before, we have like a little meteorite or something will shred up in the atmosphere and pieces of it will hit. We can investigate that. Since the entire solar system was made around the same time, you can age the asteroid, because in space there's no corrosion, there's no anything. It stays the same age because there's nothing. It's a vacuum. Yeah. So you can age that, and that's where you get the billions of years from. Just because Earth rock doesn't show it, Earth rock is not in a vacuum, therefore it'll change over time. Older rock will wither away over time. So I would argue that there is evidence of an old Earth, and that would be in the asteroids that we found.
Yeah, that's a good one. They usually don't like carbon dating for various reasons, or potassium dating, whatever. I usually don't even use those arguments when I'm debating, because there's logical reasons that they really can't refute that I think proves the Earth is at least much older than they're claiming. Mathematically, we can look at how many meteors or asteroids had hit Earth, and we can predict about how often that would have happened, and we can get a good idea of like, okay, well, we know of this many. If it would have took this many years before we get hit, then just one huge asteroid alone kind of hints that it's much older than 6,000 to 10,000 years old. But once we have an absurd amount, if it's as young as Ken is saying, that would mean Earth would have been hit within a very short period of time with hundreds of thousands of asteroids, which is very unrealistic.
Yeah.
You can look at DNA having a shelf life. If the Earth is only 10,000 years old, well, DNA has a shelf life of about 100,000 years. Wouldn't you think we would find some fragments of DNA in fossils?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think there would be something?
Yeah. Also, we can look at
light's a good one.
Light. Yeah, well, light's the most important one. I mean, we'd have to be here, since photons don't experience time. They would have immediately reached their destination. So it would have had to have been here at the time of that. So if we can see light from stars that's billions of light years away, then that we would have to have been here for billions of years, because we know that it takes billions of years for that light to get here. The other argument I would use is that I would use the tree in Norway that's older than than the Christians say the Earth is. I would also use the argument. Bill Nye uses these two arguments. The one being the layers of ice.
That's a good one too.
You would have to have 160 winter cycles per year if the Earth was only 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Just to get the amount of layers of ice that they have. Obviously, we're not having 160 winter cycles a year. I think we can agree with that. The other one being 16 million species on the planet. You would have to discover 11 new species every single day since the beginning of time. And we know that 6,000 years ago, people weren't discovering species. I mean, how many years would it have taken just to like figure out how your species works before you start discovering other species and naming them and writing those down? It's impossible that we would have found 11 species a day. We'd probably have to triple that by the time we started looking. So there's just no.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not like we came day one that humans were on planet Earth 6,000 years ago. We weren't like, all right, now this is a frog. We're going to call this, you know what I mean? Like, no. We didn't do that at first, and it's so dumb.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of ways we can measure the age of the Earth, and you can look at the Grand Canyon and how long it would have took to kind of carve that out. There's a lot of evidence that supports the Earth being much, much older than what it is, and to ignore that is, in my opinion, dishonest.
Yeah. Argument 10, mutations drive evolution. Perhaps because of movies and fiction, the popular idea that it is mutations that make evolution go. Given the time, shifts in the genetic code will produce all the variety of plants and animals on Earth and beyond. The problem? Mutations cannot produce the types of changes evolution requires, not even close. Some may benefit an organism, i.e. beetles, blah, blah, but virtually every time mutations come with a cost. That's true.
But that's mutations, part of
that's the selection. Yeah, mutations do come with a cost. But if the reward is higher than the cost, then that would help the species.
Yeah, that's also part of it. I mean, you have species that die off, and that leaves the room open for others. I mean, you look at humans. The big reason we came about is because of a mass extinction. So that kind of brought out a new era, if you will. It's kind of like a phoenix. You rise from the ashes. So that's actually part of evolution, is your evolutionary rivals dying off.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Argument number 11, the Scopes trial. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about the Scopes trial since you're kind of writing a paper on that right now. So.
Yeah, a little bit about the Scopes trial. Basically, you had a teacher in Tennessee who, at the time, there was laws in place which basically prohibited the teaching of evolution or anything that contradicted creationism from a God's perspective. This school teacher didn't like the idea of telling his students stuff that simply was not happening. This took place in the 1920s, if you're wondering. So this was a different time era. Where it was not only frowned upon, but it was flat out rejected that you could even teach it. So he teaches his students evolution and gets placed under arrest for that. It draws up a lot of controversy in national news because you have people saying, hey, if you don't teach evolution, other big universities won't take your kids because your kids are not properly prepared and educated for the university level. They're going to have to take a biology. They need to have some understanding of evolution. So you have all this stuff going on, and at the time it was against the law to do it, and he was the unfortunate victim of that. But ultimately now, after the court case and everything, teachers obviously are allowed to teach evolution, and so. That's kind of the Scopes trial.
That's even more funny that at one point they had to ban that. Like, could you imagine if we tried to ban the teachings of creationism?
People would be, absurd. People would be mad.
Yeah, argument number 12.
Go ahead.
Science versus religion. News stories thrive on conflict and intrigue. One presents science and religion as opposing forces, reason struggling to overcome draconian divine revelation. It grabs attention, but it's bunk. Many atheists and humanists oppose biblical Christianity, but science does not. After all, the truth of a risen Savior and an inherent Bible puts.
I mean, I would agree there's no conflict between religion and evolution, but there's definitely a conflict between science and thinking that Earth is 6,000 years old, or thinking humans were just popped out of here and there was no transition. That's a conflict between science.
Yeah, exactly. I think that religion, they're the ones that make science and religion opposing forces.
Yeah.
Because they're using 2,000-year-old science for them. We're using yesterday. By the way, let me talk to you about this. That was the 12th argument. But let me talk to you about this really quick before we. Let me hold on.
Move on.
Yeah, I want to show you this because this is cool. And I told you about this today, and it's that scientists see evidence for an ancient tsunami on Mars. A new study suggests that ancient Mars not only had an ocean, but it experienced a tsunami unlike anything we've seen on Earth. The study in the Journal of Geophysical Research Planets identifies a 75-mile wide crater in the north as the likely source. The BBC reported this. The scientists theorized that an asteroid smashed into the planet 3 billion years ago, creating the Lomonosov crater and triggering the tsunami. Researchers point to thumbprint terrain, so named because it resembles the thumb, like the we look on the thumb, on the planet's parched surface, whose geological formation suggests massive water movement. Reports the Christian Science Monitor. The Christians, that's weird. It was a really large scale, high speed tsunami, says French researcher François Gostard. The initial wave of impact would have been nearly 1,000 feet high, with waves about 300 feet high crashing ashore hours later.
My dude, I just had a huge stoner moment, I think.
What?
What if, you and I both believe in panspermia, correct?
Yeah.
What if the Bible is accurate, but when God was talking about the heavens and the earth was Mars, because Mars likely had life, and that could have been a great flood.
Oh, shit!
And life moved from there to Earth, where it is now, via panspermia, and maybe the Bible isn't even wrong in that aspect. I don't know, just a thought.
Oh my god, dude, that's huge.
Maybe I'm just having a stunner moment, but that sounds like and then in that case, it could have been different, and that asteroid
but the Bible would be incorrect though still, because we know that the asteroid caused a flood and not God.
Well, God could have used the asteroid.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know why God just wouldn't create a flood. If he can create a planet, he can just make a flood happen. He can just how like they do in the movies, like whoosh, like raise their hands up in the air and then water comes all over the place. Like I'd assume if he can create a planet, he doesn't need to use an asteroid.
Well, anyway, it could have also worked with panspermia and you had life moving around. I mean, there probably was life on Mars. It's obviously a long shot, but it's something worth mentioning, I guess.
Yeah. The existence of an ancient Martian ocean is actually still debated, which is what American co-author Stephen Clifford finds most intriguing about the tsunami evidence. It means there must have been an ocean present in the northern plains. That's the key point here. It indicates that there was a substantial amount of water in resistance on the Martian surface. That is so cool.
That is neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars is an interesting place, and it's interesting to know what it could have been. One thing that's interesting is to kind of think of the idea that maybe there was intelligent life like ourselves on a planet like Venus at one point, and they destroyed maybe their own atmosphere and they kind of burned themselves. But it would be interesting if we destroyed our own planet. What would it look like 100 million years later to intelligent life?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Do you think there was intelligent life on Mars?
How are we measuring intelligence? Like life, like a fish, like a dog, or like a person?
Mm-hmm.
Like a person? I'm going to say no, because I feel if there was intelligent life, we would have more evidence of it, of something remaining.
Yeah.
Like some structure or something they were able to contract. And assuming they breathe oxygen, I don't think Mars has even an atmosphere. Well, I mean, I guess there's oxygen in the water, so could have been aquatic life. I think that's realistic.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's what I'm thinking.
microbes.
It would have been aquatic life. So he's saying American patriots said science from 2,000 years ago is not credible. I guess the Earth is not spherical, which apparently Isaiah 40:22 says. Just because the Bible says it's spherical, does it also says rainbows are God's way of saying no more floods when we know exactly what rainbows are and they're not God. So it also says that a 600-year-old man can build an ark with no tools.
And it's not that we're disregarding 2,000-year-old science; it's that we're disregarding 2,000-year-old science
that's
that is
been disproven.
contradicted to
Yeah. Anyway, do you want to call that a show?
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We hope to get a creationist, hopefully Kent Hovind. That would be cool if we got him on the show. But anyway, that is it for the show today, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed, make sure you like and share, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more. I will catch up with you guys next time. Bye-bye.